Hello, I am Jennifer Braverman.
And I'm Ellen Selm.
And welcome to our podcast, Stories from the Earth,
where we explore humankind's relationship and connection with the natural world.
We would like to invite you to support the podcast you love. Every little bit helps, and with just a small donation, you can be a part of something bigger. Head over to our Patreon page, that's patreon.com/storiesfromtheearth, and choose to donate $1, $5, or $10. Every dollar brings us closer to our dreams. If you are not interested in subscriptions, you can buy us a coffee through, it's called Ko-Fi. It's ko-fi.com/storiesfromtheearth-podcast. Your support will help us take the show on the road, bring you on-site interviews and reviews from herbs, farms, schools, and all kinds of amazing places. This is just the beginning, and with your help, we're working towards making this podcast our full-time passion. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at storiesfromtheearth@gmail.com with your thoughts, stories, or ideas for future episodes.
Today we are going to be talking with Linnea Wardwell. She, along with her husband Larry, have contributed significantly to the herbal education of literally tens of thousands of individuals, helping build and strengthen the herbal community. Through their company, Herbal Educational Services, they organize and promote the annual Medicines from the Earth conference here in me and Jennifer's backyard in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and the annual Southwest Conference on Botanical Medicine at Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine in Tempe, Arizona. The goal of these conferences is to offer the highest quality information on herbal medicine through our herbal conferences, audio recordings, videos, and books, which provide opportunities for continuing education in areas such as integrative medicine, naturopathic medicine, complementary medicine, and holistic medicine. Over thousands of audio and video and lecture notes files can be chosen from by the most experienced practitioners and herbalists in the country. So thank you, Linnea. This is quite the history you have made for people, even if you are behind the scenes.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to be talking about the Medicines from the Earth Symposium, even though there are others that you do, just because it's right here, as Ellen said, in our backyard. Just curious on how and when did the Medicines from the Earth Symposium start?
It goes way back. It does. 1993. And we were living on an island in Maine at that time. And we were really good friends with Rick Scalzo, who founded Gaia Herbs. Mm-hmm. And he decided that it would be a good time to organize a symposium that brought together both herbalists and naturopathic physicians, because at that time there was sort of a dichotomy between them. And there were some herbalists who were also naturopathic physicians, but we knew about herbs somewhat, from our upbringing and from our natural lifestyle, but we really didn't know that many of the local teachers. And many of those teachers, some of them are still teaching at our conferences nearly every year. And so in 1993, there was a tent in the backyard of the 4-H Center in Ashland, Massachusetts, made a brochure, and we took, a lot of mentorship from Rick in those early years. And that was really, really helpful. And so that year, we had a couple hundred people, and it was eye-opening for us to see the passion that people have for the herbs and the healing power of herbs. And I remember one time at the, this isn't an article, you probably read it, but Seven Song was in charge of parking. And back then he was a work-study student who had just really started to come to the fore. And he knew everybody. They came in their car, they chatted a long time, then he lined them up, in really organized fashion. The line got longer and longer, but he got happier. And then he went on a few years later to found the Northeast School of Herbal Medicine, which is, one of the mainstays of the Northeastern herbal education community. And so that's a typical thing that happened. And even people who attended then went on to become teachers in their own right and founded schools. So 1993 was the beginning. And then it moved around in Massachusetts, up in New England when we were still in Maine, and Rick was in Harvard, Massachusetts at Gaia. And then when Gaia moved down to Brevard in North Carolina, that seemed like such a perfect place because the biodiversity in the mountains, in the Appalachians and near Black Mountain especially, and near Brevard, near Asheville, is so beautifully diverse, and there's so many medicinal plants. So we looked around down there and we found our spiritual home at Blue Ridge Assembly in Black Mountain. And that was it is such a beautiful place. And of course, what happened to it during Helene was really heartbreaking, if any of you have seen the videos. But they really plan to reopen. And so this year, we had to move from Blue Ridge Assembly in Black Mountain to Lake Junaluska near Waynesville on the other side of Asheville. And fortunately, that was the only place we could find that still had room, because all the other groups had been shuffled and put places and all. And so it was kind of more or less last minute that we found them and decided to go with them. And so now we're gathering the community again to be together, because now more than ever, it's really, really important.
That's even closer to where me and Ellen live.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Where do you guys live?
Literally, pretty much our backyard.
Yeah, we're in Canton, both of us.
Great. Well, come on down.
It's a peaceful place over there on those grounds. I think it won't be quite the same feel as your former center, but it'll be a nice stand-in to while the other place gets back up and running, I think.
Just found out about the wild garden there. It's an endowed wild plant garden that features all the wild native plants. It's called the Native Plant Garden, named after a woman who was founded in the name of. And I've just been looking at the plant list, and it's quite extensive. It's rather small, but it's quite extensive. So that's one exciting thing about going there.
Wow, that's cool. I was going to say that it's just really important because of the Hurricane Helene, the American Herbalist Guild Symposium. It went online. It just wasn't the same. I'm so glad that you were able to keep it in person, because it's just not the same. It really isn't. It's just like,
it is, especially for this crew. We found during the pandemic, this crew does not like to be online. They really want to be in community, because that's the most important thing. And we value that just as much as the information that's given at the symposium. And that's why we said, we have to do this. Maybe fewer people will come because of the financial burdens, if Helene has placed. And so we're offering a lot of scholarships this year. We don't want anyone to be turned away because of financial need. And so we're giving scholarships to those in financial need. We're reducing the price to have tables for the companies that have been affected locally, and anything that we can do to get more people. We have student discounts. We have work study, which is really fun, because not only do you get to come for free and attend most of the lectures, but you also get to work behind the scenes to make sure that everything goes smoothly with our team. Our motto is, if it looks really easy, then you've done a good job. But it's a lot of work. And also the other one is always smile and have a good time, because it's not worth getting uptight about. So we invite anyone who still would like to come and do work study to do that, or apply for a scholarship. It's all on our website, botanicalmedicine.org, about how to apply for all those programs. Because as I said, we do not want to turn away anyone due to financial need, especially this year.
It's not too late. The goal is to get out the podcast as soon as I can. I had some computer issues before I was like, I want to get it out before the symposium.
I know.
We'll get it out as soon as we can, so people can hear about it. And I mean, we'd like to come, definitely.
Let's work something out. Maybe you can do some reporting from there.
Yeah.
So what is the leading idea or philosophy behind the symposium? Like, what need do you feel it addresses and continues to address within the herbal community?
Well, I think in addition to the very strong community that's formed around this, of people who love to come to meet new people and also to reestablish old friendships, and the speakers who come, not only the ones who come every year, but the new ones, that community that surrounds this event is so important, even more so than Southwest, although they're dying to have it back in person. We haven't gone back in person yet for Southwest. And so this is the one that we really value as far as the community goes. So that's the first thing it provides, is a way to gather all together. And especially now, it's really, really important. The second thing is just to honor the healing power of nature, because that's really the driving force behind all herbal medicine, is that the nature is there to heal. And there's so many, especially chronic conditions, that really respond so well to herbal medicine. And so what our goal is to find practitioners who actually use the herbs in their practice successfully. And then they speak about what things have worked for them. And then other practitioners come and they learn from them. And a high point of our year is when somebody writes back and says, I took this back to my practice. I started it right away. It's actually really wonderful. Thank you so much for providing this information. So it's two-pronged. It's the community and it's the information. And the continuing education has been an outgrowth of that. We started with nurses, and they're like the backbone of our healthcare system. Mm-hmm. And they have so little information on botanical medicine, and they love it, even though many can't use it in their practice. They still want to know about it for their families and, in case, they have a practice where they might be able to use a tea or something. So we started out by applying for nursing continuing education. And that was so enthusiastically received that we expanded into acupuncture continuing education, naturopathic CE, and now we have CE for medical doctors.
Oh, wow.
And granted, they can't, many of them can't go beyond the standard of care, and we understand that. They need to understand too, they want to understand what the patients are using, what they're using in their practice when they come to them, and also what things can be used really safely that they may be able to use. And so we're getting a growing number of MDs and osteopaths and, FNPs, family nurse practitioners coming, which is really gratifying to us, because it shows that the level of information that we offer is on the caliber that people can use, who are really serious practitioners. And then, of course, it's the hands-on classes that they love the most. They do. The medicine making, like Teresa Boardwine from Virginia, getting up to her elbows in an herbal tea and showing it off, everything. They're the ones that are packed every year, which I love. And then the herb walks, with Doug Elliott. He's like a standard staple with his son now, Todd. We can offer those for continuing education for some disciplines. And it's really nice to see them getting CE for medicine making, for herb walks in the woods, telling what the herbs look like and all that. That's very fulfilling for us.
Yeah, that's such a happy medium, I think, that we need to see, going forward. And this area is fairly rich with herbal and organic farming events, but a lot of them are more from the standpoint of the back to land type of approach, or more emphasizing, maybe the agriculture, but they'll throw in a few medicine making things. But the fact that you're digging in so much more into the nitty gritty on the healing angle, to the point that you can reach people like the nurses and the MDs is really awesome.
Very great, because when I go to the doctors, I take a lot of herbs, and it's nice when you get a doctor who doesn't look like you're kind of nuts or doesn't know what you're talking about. You're like, oh yeah, I take willow bark, and they're like, okay, yeah, I know what that is. And I think that's very important also for there's a lot of questions about drug herb interactions, and a lot of that
safety. Right.
hasn't been studied, but at least if they have, some information, and people are taking herbs. Western medicine is valuable as well. It's just, differently used, and it's challenging because if you're a patient and you're like, well, I want to use herbs, but I also have to take this pharmaceutical because there isn't an herb that will do this. I have to marry the two on my own, but still try to make sure that, there's no contraindications. I can't talk today. Contraindications. It is nice, again, to have a doctor that's sort of up to speed with you and okay, I understand what you're taking and why you're taking it. And, I see the value in it as well, instead of just being like, why are you taking that stuff? It doesn't work or whatever, or you're on another planet from me. I've had plenty of experiences like that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point, is that everyone in the health professions is trying to do the best they can. And it's very important not to divide ourselves from any part of the medical profession, saying that, well, they do this, and so that's not good, or, we do this, and they don't think this is good. It's very important to accept and honor every part of the medical profession. And so it's very important to us that there's honoring of the emergency medicine and of medicine that has done research to help in certain conditions and all these things. We want to be all inclusive, and we want to honor everyone who comes, because everybody starts from where they are. no matter if they're somebody who's just getting into herbal medicine for their family, no matter if they're just starting from, becoming a medical professional and seeing that some of the drugs and things don't work or even have negative effects. Mm-hmm. Because we are dedicated to reducing the use of pharmaceuticals in medicine wherever possible, where it's safe and where botanicals can actually be a better choice. And this is something that stems back to really my childhood, is that, it's important to use the healing power of nature to heal at all times. But if you need it, the medical profession is there and they can really be heroic and help. So that's kind of our attitude. And I think it's really an important one.
Do you, I'm going to add this question onto our list. It wasn't on there, but the conversation has brought it to my mind. Because you've been doing this for so long and you have tailored the education to be suitable for people in the medical profession, do you find that people are coming from around the country to attend because they want to be there in person and they're a doctor, but they're like 5 states away kind of thing? Does that happen?
Often. And especially with professionals like naturopathic physicians and herbalists and stuff, because we're one of the few, I think I can say this I think it's true, is that we're one of the few events that offer really in-depth information on botanicals, medicine making, herb walks, at the same time offering continuing education for them. Mm. And this is what we found to be the important gap that we could fill. Mm. And so it's become really our crystallized mission to offer the highest quality information on botanical medicine to as much of a variety of health professionals that we can. It's not an endorsement of products. That's very important for CE, by the way. You can't get up and say, well, I'm from this company and this is a good thing. No mention of any companies are allowed by continuing education. You can have the exhibits, in the exhibit hall, but you can't mention any products or anything. And this has actually kept it free from commercial bias, which is extremely important to us as well.
And I feel like there's so few spaces that are free from,
yes,
commercial.
In fact, if a speaker would mention a product, even if it's not even associated with them, we have to edit it out because it's just so important. And it's frustrating for the people who go because they want to know what the best products are, but they can find that out perhaps in the exhibit hall or from the teachers outside of the lecture space. But in the lecture space, there's no endorsement or anything like that. Definitely frowned upon.
So you're going to have so many amazing speakers and classes this year. Can you tell us a few that you're especially excited about?
Oh my gosh. I was going over the list and I thought, well, I could say that one. I could say that. No, all of them. But, a couple of people. Kiva Rose is coming from New Mexico, and she does the Plant Healers publications and the Good Medicine Confluence and all. We've always admired her work, and we thought that it would be such a great thing to have her be in this area where she's, as far as I know, has never been or never spoken. And so she's going to give the keynote address, combining the mystery of plants with the clinical basis of healing. And that is something that we cherish and honor in all of our things, because there really is a spiritual basis to the plants and plant healing. And so the more that we can bring this out with practitioners who are very busy and very dedicated, but often, sometimes can lose their perspective on that. And so she's going to talk about how to bring that back into practice and combine it with practice. So I'm really looking forward to that. Another new speaker we have, Sam Kaufman. Have you ever heard of him? He's an occupant. Definitely. Yeah, the Human Path. He is a character, I will tell you. And he hasn't been to one of our conferences in quite some time. He keeps going back to school and getting more degrees. He's an incredible human being, and he'll be there. And he's talking about wound care and a couple of other things that he has a lot of, and disaster medicine, which he has a lot of experience with. So he'll be a great addition.
I was fortunate to take a class with him in person here several years back. His story is pretty neat because he was like hardcore, army medic.
Yeah, definitely hardcore. But he's also so kind and sweet. He's got this double side. And so that's what he presents in his lectures. And I think it's going to be a great addition. Also, some of the regulars are coming, like David Winston, who comes every year. Lise Alschuler is a naturopathic physician from Arizona who just became the head of, it used to be Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, and it's now Sonoran University. And the great thing about Lise is she's so dedicated to plant medicine. So it'll really give the college a really good focus for that. And she'll be there. speaking. Anybody you want to ask about who maybe you don't know about?
I just want to say that Kiva, we did her book here on the podcast, her herb book.
Cool. I didn't even notice it, but that would be some place for people to find out more about her.
Yes, her book is really amazing. I loved how she talks about the plants, but she also talks about like her story and how she came to I think it's in New Mexico where she's coming from, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. How she came to that land and her love for the land and some of her plant journey. She also like talks about, definitely like this spiritual side of the plants as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just like not your typical herb book. Mm-hmm. And I think she's really cool.
She's not your typical herbalist, let's say that. Yeah. She's really got a lot of sides to her. And I think that if there is a typical, I mean, really there isn't, but anyway. I think it'll be really great to hear her. I hope I said enough speakers because, there's about 15 coming. And so I wonder if I should go through some of the others or like Jim McDonald, as far as I know, it's been a while since he's been in the Southeast. He was recommended by one of our other speakers to come because he doesn't travel as much anymore, I understand. And so that's going to be really nice to have him there. And he's going to give Not Your Usual Plant Walk, I think is the name of his plant walk. So I think that'll be fun. Another speaker that comes every year is Kenneth Profrock. And he just gave the most amazing talk on hydrogels at the Southwest Conference. The thing about him is he loves the herbs, but he's also a biochemist. So when you get him making something, and he's going to talk about acid-base chemistry for herbalists, in other words, talking about how to extract in acid bases and why it's so important for some herbs. And so he gets really technical, and then he gets down to the nitty-gritty about how to make medicines that are the most useful and most potent. And this other one, he made a hydrogel right in front of us in the camera, and he mixed this thing and that thing, and then it all gelled up, and he was telling how to use it, and it was really really profound.
I appreciate you're getting speakers that dig into the nitty-gritty on some of the science and how to make the most potent use of the plants and things like that as well, because I worked in the natural products industry for 16 plus years before I had my daughter, and am now staying home with her. And in fact, that's how I met Jennifer, because we were coworkers for a bit. But we were coworkers for a bit when like Whole Foods, when we were there, was like transitioning a little more further into, well, let's just say it wasn't what it used to be. And it wasn't, and that wasn't even what it used to be. And that wasn't even what it used to be. Like in the time that I've worked in this industry, I went from like getting to attend like with other and smaller, more mom and pop companies I worked for were a little bit better about it. But like going to like, brand and product training, say for like Gaia Herbs and things like that. And you would get these like really detailed scientific backgrounds about compounds in the plants and all that kind of stuff. And I was just always so enamored by that. And over the years, I saw on the commercial side of things, it start to shift more to be like, these are the things you want to say to sell this to the customer. It's like, well, I could have deduced that. I didn't need to, I was hoping to come and learn more about the thing and the plants involved. And as that commercial side kind of got away from that sort of education, it's nice to know that for those of us that want to be the big plant nerds, that there's still places that we can go in a group setting and kind of have
nerd out.
Have the kinds of people there that want to talk about that sort of thing. So that's awesome.
That's great. Whole Foods used to send parcels of people from their home office, from the, what is it called, health and beauty section, where the supplements are. And they used to come in droves, like 20 people at a time and all. As the stores changed, that also changed. And it's a loss because many of those departments now, there isn't anybody who you can really ask anymore. And I know there are other considerations like liability and stuff, but still it helps to have some knowledge. We really missed seeing them because we knew that the customers would not get as good at information as they did before. But things change, we have to adapt. I'm glad that plant nerds like you, Ellen, can still come and find what you need, because I'll tell you, if anybody's a plant nerd, it's Kenneth Profrock. He loves his biochemistry. Well, he's really big into liposomes, but he's also big into using a nebulizer.
Oh.
and putting things in a nebulizer to deliver them to the lungs, and all these different formulas. So we have a great photograph of him with his whole chemistry lab spread out on the table. And he just loves that kind of thing. He really does. And he compounds most of his medicines in his own office.
Wow.
He very rarely buys compounded medicines from anybody else, which is pretty impressive because considering the time it takes to practice and everything. And so that's what we like to feature, is that because people can learn from that. And it also reduces the price to the patient if they do their own compounding. A fun aside about Kenneth.
People are doing so many cool things.
They are. They are. And we're also having Lisa Chmielewski, and she is an expert in the healing power of fungi. We haven't had her yet either, and she is also going to participate in the diabetes panel because there's a lot of use for easy compliance for patients with type 2 diabetes to actually control the situation without using medicines. And she is going to talk about that in her panel, as well as other lectures on botanical medicine and the how do you say it? The fungi community. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that'll be an interesting addition too. And not just the same people talking about it, because we haven't ever had her before. So there's a lot. I could go on and on. We're so excited. We really are. We can't wait to have everybody meet, the teachers and the people coming and the exhibitors and everybody, and see it all take place.
Now, over time, has this event seen any evolution? What were some of the major changes you've made, and why, or hopes you have for it, how you envision it going forward?
Especially the going forward question. That's a really good question. Since that first one in the tent, we, as I said, have begun to focus more on the need for continuing education in the health professions for really good information. So that's one of the changes. The other changes, of course, have been the venue. From the Massachusetts 4-H Center, excuse me, which was really pretty basic. We had food served outside under a tent and everything. And by the way, we had 4 generations at that event of my family. We had my health food granny, who was about 4'10". When I introduced her and I told her that she had been an acolyte of Bernard Jensen and lived a natural foods life all her life, she had been so kind of like by her coworkers and all not understood. And when she got a standing ovation at that tent, under that tent that night, she stood up and she gave the peace and the tears are running down her face and everything. It was really sweet. And then my mom was there and she loves plants. She named me after Linnaeus, the Swedish botanist. And then we were there and our son was there, who was only 11, but he gave out about halfway through and he said, "Mom, I'm really tired about hearing about flavonoids. Can I go play with my cousins?" He began to be a mainstay of the event as he got older, and you can hear him on a lot of recordings. "Devin, can you fix the lights?" and all that stuff. That was the beginnings. And even then, there was the thought that we need to have kind of like an understanding. Herbalism, naturopathic medicine, regular medicine, all these things have the same goal, is to restore health. It's just that their methods might be different. And so what we have done is just to solidify that continuing education piece. And that really has meant a lot to us. And then as far as the venue goes, we moved around quite a bit in the early days. We held it in Massachusetts a couple times. And then we lived on an island in Maine for a while. And so we had one at the College of the Atlantic, a small conference that was really fun right there in Bar Harbor on the coast of Maine. And then Rick used to organize these herbalist weeks, retreats. And so we had people like Cascade Anderson Geller and Juliet DeBarkley Levy and David Winston and Doug Elliott come out for a week and be with the campers. And they used to camp out at this place near us and on this little cove. And it was so beautiful. And they just completely immersed themselves into the plant medicine of Maine. And Juliet used to swim every morning in the first early morning light in that cold Maine water. That was her thing.
Wow.
So that was part of what we did for a while. And then it all solidified more when we moved down to Black Mountain. Because that place, there's something about that Blue Ridge Assembly that is so beautiful, with the woods surrounding it, filled with ginseng and all kinds of other beautiful plants that just, as I said, became our spiritual home. We had fireside meetings and everything. So those are the 2 evolutions that I can see. And as far as the future goes, it's really important to us to continue to honor and maintain the community that's built up around these events and the community that we've been able to earn CE, for the information on botanical medicine. And so when you're thinking about moving on, you want to make sure that it's in the hands of people who will honor this community, honor the community that we have working with us, our team, honor the community of teachers, and honor the community of attendees. And this is what we're still looking for. And so we are going pretty strong, even after, how many years has it been? It's going to be 40 years at Blue Ridge Assembly in 2026. It's going to be 40 years there. Can you believe that? And so that's what happens when you keep going. There's a lot of years behind you. But we also feel like the experience has helped us to hone what we know is important and to have that as the goal to continue. And we really do. And we're working toward that, and it's getting more possible, but not quite there yet. But we do look forward to a bright future for this because we don't want to see it just go away.
Well, it seems with the caliber of people you have had and still having, like even this year, that there's no signs of slowing.
No, there isn't really. We just have more people doing more of the work than we do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
In fact, it's a great thing.
Sit back and enjoy more. Yeah.
Right.
Taking the fruits of your labor all those years.
Yeah.
I love that you film and record the classes. Big part of it early on, and something that was important, and I think it definitely is, because I know that Ellen and I have gone to conferences and we're like badly taking notes,
Oh, I know.
But also, like, there's so much really good information in the classes. It's good to have them sort of preserved in a way.
We have recorded everyone since 93.
Wow.
We have an incredible library. And we consider ourselves stewards of that information and that knowledge. And we really treat it very respectfully. So we've made those recordings available for not very much, because it's important to us that the information gets out to people who need it and want it. And it's mainly for practitioners. That is one thing I should say. It's not really geared toward people who want to help themselves, although you can listen to it and try to use some of the things. The main thing is for practitioners helping other practitioners to find a way to help treat their patients in the best possible way. The other thing that we did was during the pandemic, we started to record the lectures on Zoom, on video. And we had never done that before because video was a whole new thing. But now with Zoom, it's so easy. And so now we have videos of everything as well as audios. And those are really good learning tools because you can see the PowerPoint. I was never a fan of PowerPoint when it first came out. I loved it when the speakers would just speak and we would record them and you'd have that information. But I have to say, now I'm kind of kicking and screaming going toward the idea that it is nice to have a written note and a written thing to look at while they're talking about it. And it solidifies it. So when you see the video, you hear the speaker speaking and you also see the PowerPoint they're talking about. And that's really the most powerful learning tool. But some people like to listen to it in their cars or on their phone when they're not in connection, or in their kitchen when they're not looking at the screen. So we have both.
And if you missed any of the symposiums, which, I've missed all of them, up until this point, even though I've definitely been around since 93, it looks like you get all the videos for about...
Going back to 2000, the pandemic year.
$369. You can get a huge...
Right.
Yeah.
And we also do have student discounts for that and other discounts. But and then the nice thing about the audio is that they're much less expensive because they're much less expensive to curate and produce. And so if you're really on a tight budget, you can get those and you can look at the notes. And we have a book of notes compiled as a PDF for every conference that we offer. And you can go through and read those notes with a magnifying glass. Look at the PowerPoints. They're very hard to publish in a book unless you have a 1,000-page book. In that way, it allows everyone to get the information. It's not just limited.
Yeah, so the audio looks like $189. So it's all the recordings from, the symposiums.
Right, that's the full set, and then you can buy individuals if you're just interested in one information, one subject. Yeah. We have them all listed by subjects, so you can go through and look, and listed by teacher. So you can go through and look at your favorite teacher. So
topics. Ooh, ADHD.
Lots of them going through.
Yeah, this is great. And then speakers, right? So like, I wanna hear about 7-song and all. That's awesome. That's great. What is your herbal background, and how did you get interested in herbalism?
Well, my family, as I said, my granny was a follower of Bernard Jensen. She had an epiphany when her younger daughter was really ill with rheumatic fever, and they lived in Portland, Oregon. And she took her, all the doctors gave up on her, and she took her to what was described back then as a naturopathic doctor. And he put her on a regimen of herbs and natural foods and all kinds of dietary things. And she lived until she was in her 90s.
Wow.
And so that changed my granny's life. And she was out there. She would tell you if she thought you were eating the wrong thing, she would definitely tell you. And then my mother was really a world-class organic gardener. And she gave classes at Mother Earth News on organic gardening for many years. And she founded the Virginia Biological Farmers Association and did their newsletter and worked with A.P. Thompson, who was an apple farmer at that time, one of the few organic farmers in the whole Charlottesville area. So they worked together. So she was always really dedicated to the plants and to organic gardening and not using chemicals. Also really told me, she said, now look, if you're going to be out in the woods and you see a plant, you need to know the Latin name of that plant, because that plant could go by 5 different common names. So you need to know the Latin name. So she named me after the man who first devised the binomial nomenclature of plants and also had a favorite flower called the twin flower. And that twin flower is a little, what she used to call a belly flower, really close to the ground with 2 little pink bells hanging from it. Latin name of that is Linnea Borealis. But she did tell me too that I was Linnea. I was not Linnea, and if anybody wanted to call me Linnea, then I should correct them. So my first grade teacher was really incensed at that. But in any case, she named me after that. She instilled in me an amazing love of plants, and they became backpackers and hikers and, going to all the amazingly remote places in the world, in their later lives, and my dad and she. And so that instilled that love of that natural world. So when Rick asked us, and we had been meditation teachers for about 15 years before this, and we got to know Rick because we lived together in a meditation center that we ran. Rick said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I really want to bring it in the clinical aspect of herbalism as well as the folk aspect and meld them and have something for everyone. We said, hey, yeah, consider us, because I loved running the registration office at the meditation center. So I thought, well, sure, I can do that. And I sure have learned a lot. We both have over these years. It's been such an incredible learning experience. And we give Rick a lot of credit for involving us at the first. And then as we became more and more knowledgeable about, clinical herbal medicine and about the teachers that were out there and all, it just gradually fell on us more and more. And now, Medicines from the Earth was born out of that initial contact. So that's how it all happened. And I feel like it's sort of the fulfillment of what they call in Indian philosophy, dharma, where you're doing your thing that you really should be doing. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that. I feel like I'm so lucky because so few people can say that about their lives. Mm-hmm. And for us to have found this path out of all the many, many, many that we could have taken has been just such a blessing for us. And we've gotten much more out of it than we've put in. We really have.
Has the plant bug bitten continued generations? Like the love of it, has that passed on to your children and your grandchildren? Even if they don't want to take over running the symposium in the future, are they at least like dabbling in their backyards and that kind of thing?
Well, the boutonnieres at their wedding were rosemary. And there were lavender plants on every table in pots that people could take home with them. Their cabinet is filled with herbs and, some supplements and stuff. And they eat pretty much like we do, which is amazing to think that passed on. We never told our son how he should live, what kind of diet he should eat. We figured he has to find his own way. But through all his long association and seeing what amazing things that these practitioners have been able to do and what has come of what we've done and how much he has helped us in it, it just rubbed off. They have their own path, doing other things, but in benefit of the planet, which is gratifying to us. And so for the future, I think that they and their kids know that if it tastes bad, it's probably good for you. So, it's passed on. It has, and that makes me feel good.
So this is a question we like to ask a lot of our guests in this realm, and I'm very interested to hear your answer because your line of work has straddled so much the historical, spiritual, folkloric elements as well as marrying into the modern medicine elements. So in taking all that into consideration, what would you say your definition of health and healing is?
That's a great question to ask people because there's so many different answers for one thing, but also it gets you thinking about what the answer would be to that. And I would just say a balanced life where you have all the building blocks of health in your own life. And that would be for us, a regular routine of meditation and being in nature and fulfilling work, that you feel like you're doing something to help others. It's not just for yourself. And then also the relationship between the plants and your own life are to prevent and also manage disease if it comes along. And so those are really the tenets. It isn't really complicated. It's just living a life that you feel is right, the right life for yourself and for the planet and for others. And that's all we care about. Whenever a decision comes along, is this the right thing? And those are the sort of the yardsticks that we judge them by.
I appreciate that answer because of how much more encompassing it is, certainly for yourselves, but hopefully for listeners, to consider that bigger picture, because I think we live in a world, especially with technology these days, everything's become so much more specialized and with laser microscopic focus, we don't necessarily, you ask a question about health and healing and people think very small and maybe almost too literally sometimes, instead of thinking about how even something like just allowing time for a regular routine and just trying to maintain a balance plays into that bigger picture of health. So I appreciate you speaking to that.
Well, you always have to strive for it too. It's not to say that we found the perfect life, believe me, because stuff comes along and it will, And so that's what we strive for and that's what we picture as the perfect life. But to gain that, it's always a question of vigilance and work, You have to think about it. You do. And it's a conscious choice you have to make. And sometimes it's not easy. And so I don't want to give the impression that we've got it all figured out because we do not. We're just working on it day. It's like marriage, We've been married, it's been 57 years. And people say, oh, you have it all figured out by now. And I'm saying, no, you actually have to keep working at it every single day. You really do. It's like a labor of love and a job that you have in life. And it's borne incredible fruits. We've been really lucky that way too. And not many people can't say that. And so it's not that we have a perfect life. Please don't give that impression because it would not be correct. But we have a good, wonderful life based on those things.
Can be very challenging. I don't know if it's more so today. It feels like it than in the past to, sort of have that more balanced life.
I think you're right. I really do. It used to be easier to rent a house for not very much, buy a house, buy food that you could afford, buy a car that you could afford, and all those things. And I think about it now, and I think what you have to do to just start out with those basics in life in order to lead a balanced life, in order to lead a life that is fulfilling, where you're not always worried about the bank account and everything, because that's a real stultifying thing. And it's much, much harder now. I agree with you, Jennifer. It is, and it's sad. It really is, because younger people starting out have a much more difficult time, and we realize that. We bought a house in Oakland, our very first house, for $7,000 in the Oakland Hills, overlooking the bay. That's not anything you could do anymore.
Yeah.
And granted, that was more money back then, but still, it was, pretty much all the savings we had, and we figured out how to cover it, but you can't, it's just not usually possible anymore. That's why people helping others and working together to make that possible, even in co-housing or those projects like that. And especially now after Helene, it's just so heartbreaking that so many people still don't have places to live that are comfortable and all that. And so believe me, we recognize that. And that's why I want to reiterate again that no one is turned away from our events due to lack of ability to pay, because we want people to come and have that healing experience of the community that's formed around this. And you'd be amazed, it just drops away when you get out there, and everything else drops away, so that you can really enjoy that connection with new friends, old friends, and the information. And that's what the herbs really bring us.
I'm 47. We just managed to buy a house last year, and we had pretty much given up. It was just incredibly challenging, even with like 2 decentish income.
Yeah.
We were fortunate to be able to have family that we could ask for help. So it was very much like we didn't do it on our own either. And we also had an incredibly large amount of luck.
That comes into it. It really does.
All the
And
houses.
intention too, it's really difficult to remember at times the power of intention and picturing what you want so that it will come about. It doesn't always, believe me, but it can really help if you have a set goal like that or a goal in mind that you're keeping to one-pointed. That probably was part of it too.
You're mentioning about how, don't get me wrong, there's been struggles, and I mean, it wouldn't really be a human life if there wasn't any. But the striving, I think you used the word striving, and that jumped out at me, especially in relation to health, because my mother-in-law has struggled with a chronic illness for probably going on 2 decades now, and she's done a lot of the legwork herself because so many doctors just scratch their heads, and but she still has to consult them, at times to make sure, like, rule things out, make sure this isn't killing me kind of situation. And so she's found over all these years this sort of balance of just maintaining as best she can, despite the illness, that balances what she needs to get out of Western medicine with what she does naturally and so forth. And she's very regular about checking in with her doctor, who happens to be an osteopathic doctor, which sometimes that field seems to be a little bit more embracing or a little bit more knowledgeable in some cases of the side of things. So he's always been really good at listening to her and taking, notes even on what she says in case it's something he wants to pass on to consideration with other difficult cases or whatever. And she had a checkup just the other day, and she had expressed, what she's expressed oftentimes over the years. It's just that feeling that I think probably anyone with chronic illness relates to, of, not even just 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
No.
And he said to her, and this was so great, he said, but the point is you keep trying. He's like, you try more than anybody else that I have as a patient. You keep trying. And so there's where the striving is, and how that kind of comes into play with the, balance doesn't just happen magically. And in some cases, maybe with chronic illness, you're never going to have balance in the way that would be ideal, or that somebody else who doesn't have a chronic illness perceives balance. But finding the balance that works for you. And it was his way of basically saying, like, the importance of just not giving up and succumbing and basically surrendering to the negative, as opposed to actually taking the actions to do the striving. That's part of what living is to take the actions to do the striving. She took that to heart very much when she left the appointment, and I just thought that was very nice of him to say to her, and worth sharing in this context. So.
It is. You bring up a really important point, is the power of the words of the practitioner. And they are hugely powerful. And to give hope and meaning to what she does in life, that reinforce that part of her life that is so difficult. And I think really that's a whole nother part of a healing appointment that you would have with a practitioner. I don't know. I guess all practitioners are different, and we've had them both ways, right? We've been to them where they don't have any encouragement because they don't want to misspeak and they don't want to give false hope. But then on the other hand, if they pick out the thing that is the most important to that patient, and they respect it and they recognize it, that has an incredible healing power. And that's what that practitioner did, that osteopath. And I just laud that practitioner so much for doing that, because just think of the difference that made in your mother-in-law's life.
Yeah.
It's huge. So I think that's a good point to bring out in healing, herbal or other, is that we need to have faith in what we do, but also we need to have faith in the patient and give the patient honor and respect. That's really important. I love that story, actually. Ellen, thanks for sharing that with me. I wish her all the best.
So we love books on this podcast.
I saw that on there. I thought about that. I'm glad you gave that to me in advance, because I have so many books. I'm trying to downsize my books, actually. Because now you can look them, most of them are online and all that, and it's a lot more economical and, less space, but still I love the books. And so I was thinking about that a lot. And you know who my favorite herbal author is Michael Moore, the herbalist. And I know he writes mainly about Western plants, but he has this encyclopedic knowledge of factoids that he weaves in to this wry sense of humor that just is off the wall at moments. And we were lucky enough to know him quite well at the Southwest Conference. He and Donna, his partner at the time, came every year. We had some problems with him, actually. After one particularly profane session, I had to go up to him afterwards and I said, Michael, for the recording, you just can't do that. You can't do that. And he was, oh, this and oh, that, and everything. I'm thinking, oh, what do I do? The courage to go up and ask Michael Moore not to swear. But I did, because there were so many people who were incensed about it and left the lecture. And it was
That's
very
a good lecture. What are you talking about?
It was a really good lecture, but it's funny because it got to the point where it was overdone.
Yeah.
And you could argue that that was him and you should take it all and that it should be fine and you shouldn't be concerned with it. But there were enough people who were concerned, and we're like mom and pop, if anything comes up, we're the ones they go to, except not now anymore. They don't tell us stuff anymore. They tell Caitlin because they don't want to make us feel bad. But anyway, that's beside the point. So I did go up and I said, you can't really. And so he was very good. And every once in a while he said, yeah, Linnea said I had to be good, so I'm not going to swear. But in any case, he was such a character. I mean, he was just amazing. When our son was young, he had to do a book report. And he said, I don't want to read any of these books. What do we have around the house? I don't want to go way out in the country. Didn't want to go to the library. And I said, I think you should read one of Michael's books. And he started reading it and he was laughing out loud. And so many of the bioregions that he was reading about were places that we'd been in our camper in our olden travel days in the camper around Southwest and everything. So he recognized a lot of those plants, just about the bioregion and about the feeling in general of the Southwest. And so he loved it. I thought, now this is a great combination, because you can have all these factoids that are so esoteric and things that nobody else knows about these plants that he has come across either in his practice or his experimentation or his intuition. And then you combine that with this really off-the-wall sense of humor. And he is definitely one of a kind. So I would say of all the books, those are my favorites. They really are. And I also like the encyclopedias, like the one by... Oh, sorry. What was that, Ellen?
Well, I was saying he kind of helps keep it from getting a little too clinical or dry. It's like
he does. Oh, definitely. And although his clinical knowledge is superior to so many people who's starting out, because he had so many years of experience before he passed, and really he tried to put a lot of that into books and his writings and his talks and everything, but a lot of that, it was just all in his head, and he was really one of a kind. And then the encyclopedias, as I was saying before about the, there's the Encyclopedia of Children's Health by Mary Bowe and the Encyclopedia of Women's Health by Tori Hudson. There's one other one I thought about. Who was that? Jill Stansbury, her latest compendiums. I don't know if you've seen those, but they are for practitioners and they're on certain sections of the bodily systems, and there's 5 volumes.
Yeah.
And boy, talk about nerding out, Ellen. You would love those. And she did all the illustrations herself.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really a labor of love. And she has those now, and she's really pretty much finalized a lot of what's in her brain, and now she's retiring. They're big books. Yeah. Extensive books, expensive and extensive.
Yeah, that's probably why I haven't gotten.
And a good reference, not something probably that you'd read from cover to cover, but a really good reference for practitioners especially. And at Medicines from the Earth, we get a lot of people who come for their families and for themselves, to learn about the herbs and to just revel in that kind of community. So it's not just for practitioners. I should emphasize that, because we do have something unique in that we offer CE for practitioners, but we have an herb walk track, we have a medicine making track, and then we have a couple clinical tracks. So you can find something for everyone. And you don't have to stick with one track. If you find one lecture that you like in one track, you go to that one, and you don't have to sign up in advance for any lectures. You just come for the whole weekend, and if you decide you want to change, the great thing is about recording everything is that you can get the recordings are part of the registration fee or part of the scholarship. And because we realize that people get so worried that they're going to miss one if they go to the other. And then during the pandemic, we wanted to make it so that everybody could have everything. And then we started that, and then we couldn't really go back on it. And so now we give everything to everybody. And so they come to a live event. They go to what they want to, feeling perfectly comfortable that they can get the video and the audio and the lecture notes as part of their registration fee to use afterwards to fill in what they didn't go to, so that they don't have to worry about missing anything.
Sometimes Ellen and I will go to different
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, divide and conquer. It's definitely a challenge because you're like, they're all so good.
And it took that all anxiety, because people come running up to us and say, which one should I go to? I'm going to miss this one and I'm going to miss that one. And I don't, the recordings are another expense and everything. So we finally said, okay, I'm going to take all this anxiety out of it. Just have everybody have everything. And that way they can have the full experience and all the information that's given. And everybody says, I didn't have to make any more decisions. So that felt good to do, even though it was, not as lucrative, but what the heck, you have to do the right thing.
Well, speaking of, can you tell us some of your favorite ways that you connect with the natural world and find peace and stay grounded in your everyday life?
We got married in 1967. And we went on our honeymoon to the Adirondacks after everyone had left. And we were by a lake. And we heard this amazing silence of nature. You know how it vibrates in those really silent areas of life? Of nature, when there's nobody else around, no traffic, no nothing. And we said to ourselves, we have to live near a place like this where we can walk out our door and be in nature, because we know how important it is and we can feel it in our bones here. And that was like a learning moment for us. So what we do is we live in the forest and we just go out in the forest. And we do go to Maine. We were able to keep our little place in Maine that we built ourselves. Our son grew up there and it was too precious to leave. And so when we're there, we go and take walks by the ocean. And that is really healing. The ocean is beautiful. And dive in that cold water. Well, I wouldn't say dive. I would say dip really quickly. I'm not one of those people that can swim all the way down the cove and back again. Those are the things that are really important to us, is spending time in nature. And when I don't get to do it and I feel overwhelmed and I think I can't possibly do all this stuff, I say, time to leave it all behind. And even a 15-minute walk will do wonders for it. And it's nice if you're close, but if you're not, there's always a patch of park or something like that. Looking at the plants and seeing what's blooming. That's the other thing I love to do, is noting the wildflowers that are coming up and getting so excited about seeing my old friends and thinking about my mom and her favorite, what was the one she loved here in Oregon, because she grew up in Oregon. And her beautiful Clarkia was her favorite one. Even after she passed, I would say, Mom, look, there's a beautiful Clarkia. So those kind of things are so healing, and getting out with your family and your loved ones, either in nature or for a dinner or some kind of sense of community. Those are the other things that really are grounding. And if you don't do it enough, it's a lot of work, to host people and organize a potluck or something like that. And, right before you think, oh, I wish this were just over right now. But then once you get into it, it's just so nourishing to nourish each other. So the community is the other thing. We spent from 1968, when we left our government jobs, until 1998, 30 years looking for what we thought was the ideal place to live. And we finally realized that you make your own ideal place to live. There's no such thing as an ideal place. But we found almost close to it, actually, here in Ashland, Oregon. Pretty close, but it took a long time. And our philosophy was the learning is in the looking. So we moved a lot. We looked around a lot. But always it was the thought in mind that we would be near forest and we would near nature and some place to get away from everything. And now in the age of computers, which we didn't even have when we first started out, that's even more important. To leave it all behind and get out without your phone, without anything, and just be that one pointed focus in that forest bathing kind of idea where you just get out and let that wash over you.
Yeah, I've been staring out your window this whole time.
Yeah, that's right.
Looking
that's
at the
our
trees.
Forest. We have tall trees here, and they've grown so much. And then one fell on our house the other day. That was exciting.
No.
But fortunately, it was only the fluffy part that fell on the roof, so it didn't do any damage. But the guy still has to come and clean it up because it's beyond us now. Yeah, that's the disadvantage of the forest. There's lots of trees. On the other hand, that's healing for us. It is.
We've been really experiencing that here, especially with the hurricane bringing down so many trees.
Oh my gosh, I know.
It's amazing. I've lived here since 87. And, well, my parents moved from Brooklyn, New York when I was 9. And
to Asheville?
to just outside of Asheville. We We bought 3.5 acres of land, and the real estate lady was like, "Oh, this is too far out for you." We just little farmhouse. We just kind of fell in love, and our neighbors adopted us, and my mom had like
Wow.
a huge garden. Anyway, I'm off. Where was I going with this? Trees.
Wind and trees.
Trees.
So I think that I'm not alone in this, but we've never seen so many trees fall, and the big ones, like huge ones, just on the side with their roots. If you can, name one herb that has impacted your life in a positive way. What ways has your life been improved by that herb? And you can also name more than one, because it could be hard to name one for us plant
They do
eaters.
change depending on
They
your,
do.
your situation.
They
They
also
really
do
change a lot.
change. Yeah, yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
so I was trying to think of the first one that was really important, and oddly enough, it was fenugreek seed. And we went on this journey after we quit our government jobs, and we took our little Volvo, and we, went across the country in this little washing machine car, and we found a naturopathic clinic that someone had recommended to us. And at the time, I was having a lot of urinary tract infections. And they said, brew up fenugreek tea until you can smell it everywhere on your skin and everything. And it worked. And I've used it all my life whenever I've had that. So that was my first really favorite herb, because it can be nasty and uncomfortable and all that stuff, those kind of infections. And I was young. And so that was the first one. But then, gosh, going through, we've had so many that we've kind of relied on even for a decade or more. But I guess right now I would say licorice, because it's so sweet and delicious and nourishing and health promoting. There's something about licorice that I can't get enough of. And then Tulsi is the other one. I love a Tulsi rose tea. It's my favorite morning tea. It sort of centers you and just makes you realize what the important things are somehow. I don't know why. It just has that effect on me. And maybe it's my imagination, but it certainly is something that I really love. So I guess that's enough of an answer, because there have all been all kinds of other ones along the way. All kinds of.
I think Tulsi is definitely an herb for our times, for sure.
It is, definitely.
And it's like a tea that I've actually felt almost an immediate effect. On tinctures are very fast acting, but teas, I feel like they usually for me tend to act slower, but Tulsi tea is just like
Yeah, well, that must be what I feel from it, because it really is the real deal. And because that's the same way I feel. It's like, oh, okay, I can do this.
So before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just that I've enjoyed this conversation very much. You ask great questions, and you have such a good perspective on everything. And I felt like it's been a really good meeting of the minds, and I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
If I can peel away from the 2.5-year-old, maybe I will make it over to that symposium this year.
Yeah, let's talk about how you might want to participate or come or anything like that, because you both are so dedicated to the herbs and spreading the word about herbs. So afterwards, we'll definitely talk about that. Yeah.
Well,
that'd be
it's
great.
closer to us now, so
Yes, that's great to hear.
maybe for one day.
Sure.
We'll talk about it. So I want to thank our guests again. Thank you so much. It was amazing conversation. And everyone, please check out the symposium. Links will be in the description. Even if you somehow miss it this year, there are recordings. There are going to be recordings up, and please catch it next year.
Oh, the date is May 16th to the 18th.
That's
I didn't
important.
think we mentioned it. Yeah, I just thought about that. I thought, I was going to say that, and then I forgot. So May 16th to 18th at Lake Junaluska. That might help people to decide whether they're available or not.
That might. All right. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and TikTok, which I haven't posted in TikTok in a while, but we're on it. And again, we'd like to invite our listeners to consider supporting us through a humble little donation and going to our Patreon page for $1, $5, or $10. The funding really does help us out. Or if you do not have an extra $1, $5, or $10, please give us a like or follow on your favorite social media platform. That really, really also helps out the podcast. So we appreciate it. And until next time, we'll see everyone later. So,
Thank you, Linnea.
bye.